Hi, everybody. This is Kat from Magoosh, and I am the MCAT expert at the company. It's an online company that serves a variety of students who are taking a variety of admissions tests. And as many of you know, there have been some pretty major changes to the MCAT over the past couple months. And as of now, only a couple groups of students have taken the shortened MCAT. The shortened MCAT will continue through the rest of the 2020 testing year. And today I'm really excited because we have a student who is going to be telling us about her experience registering for, studying for, and taking the shortened MCAT. So I am going to be doing some Q&A with Hannah Mueller, and she's from Duluth, Minnesota. She's going into her senior year and is a biochem expert. And Hannah, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you are in the MCAT admissions process, anything about how you are juggling your time right now?
Hi guys, my name is Hannah Mueller. I'm originally from northern Minnesota. I'm at school at the University of Minnesota Duluth studying biochemistry with a biology minor. I will be a senior this year. I'm really excited to graduate. I am currently applying for the 2021 cycle. I actually submitted my application yesterday, so that's really exciting. I took the MCAT June 5th, so just waiting for the results now.
Fantastic. Okay, and congratulations on the application.
Thank you.
And so this was the first time you've taken the MCAT, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And are there any other things that you're juggling right now, like research or part-time work or clinical?
Yeah, actually, the last month has been really crazy. I did not have a job in like the second half of March and April due to COVID. And then in May, I was allowed to come back to work at the hospital because I am like as needed. And so lately I have been working over part-time. I also have 3 summer courses going on right now. So it's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure, so many pre-med students are juggling a lot. And so I'm sure that people will be really interested to hear what your experiences were juggling all this while studying for the MCAT. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to some questions about the registration process.
Okay.
Did you have any test date cancellations leading up to the test?
Yes, I had 2. My original test date was, I believe, April 24th, and that got canceled at the start of April. And then after that one got canceled, I changed it to May 15th, and then that one also got canceled. And so I actually ended up rescheduling, I believe, 3 times.
Oh my goodness. And what was that like for you? I mean, was it in terms of stress levels or thinking, how did you handle that?
It was very stressful. The first time I rescheduled to May 15th, it wasn't so bad because not the AMCAS site, but the AAMC site wasn't down. The second time, I originally scheduled it for June 19th, but that was very stressful. It was an all-day process. I had a physics final that day, so I was going in between like the MCAT schedule and my physics final, and it was very stressful. I was lucky enough that I wasn't working that day, so I could take the time off and like babysit my computer since 6 in the morning. But it was a hassle for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was quite a day. We were following it, and I woke up really early just to see what was going on. And yeah, it was a very stressful, memorable day.
Yeah.
So how did you choose your test time, date, and location, and did you get your first choice?
I did get my first choice. I've been going to work at 6 in the morning, and I tend to study better in the morning. Like even if I get a full 8 hours of sleep and I wake up at a good time, my mental focus just goes after 3 p.m. So I knew that the early test day would be good, like the early morning. I originally actually picked June 19th because I I was kind of lost for an area of my study schedule. I'm like, I'll do the month-long Magoosh thing. And I thought that I only had a week between when the month-long program ended and my MCAT date, but it turned out to be 2 weeks. And I just elected to move it up the 2 weeks and get it over with because I originally started studying in September. So I'm like, well, it's kind of now or never.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the hardest things about this has been trying to figure out what to do when you're ready to take the test. And then you've got these strange gaps before the testing date.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that, about the studying and preparation stages for the MCAT. What was your study process like in general? So, I mean, in terms of maybe your schedule, you mentioned that you started studying in September. So it sounds like it was about 8-9 months of studying. And then anything about your method for organizing your studies?
I think that my method was very unique to me. I don't know what other people have done, but from my perspective, it doesn't seem very normal, at least. I did originally start studying in September. I bought the Kaplan review books. And so I went through a book a month until I was done with those in March. And then I planned a month-long online review because my test was originally in April. Well, my April date got canceled. And so I had previously taken a few practice tests before then. So I reviewed what subjects I struggled with. And then I went on Khan Academy for the MCAT prep and did videos on those. And then after the April 24th one got canceled, I thought, wow, I should probably get my butt in gear and actually dive into all of the subjects. And so that's when I chose Magoosh and did the month-long.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting journey. So you did a combination of sort of reading and also, the video method. And did you have all the prereqs done going into, test date?
Yes, it was kind of a close call, but yes. The way my college is set up for biochemistry majors, my first taste of biochemistry was supposed to be this upcoming fall, but because I didn't know any biochemistry going into the MCAT and I still wanted to apply this cycle, I took a biochemistry course for biology majors, and so that allowed me to get all of the prereqs done. So in short, yes, but not very conventional, I guess.
Okay. And what would you say your breakdown was between studying content versus answering practice questions?
I definitely spent a lot more time on content. It was probably, towards the end, it was probably closer to 60-40 content and questions. But for the majority, it was probably 75, 25, 80, 20. It was definitely more content based.
That's a really common question I get asked. That's why I asked you. So when you found out that you were going to be taking a shortened MCAT, how did that change your practice, especially in terms of pacing, or did it?
It really didn't. I think the biggest part for me was it was just a mental switch where I've been preparing for so long for this 8-hour test, and then all of a sudden it's under 6. So it was more of a surprise, but it didn't really change how I studied. I guess I had to pay more attention to the clock for my full-length practice test, but it didn't really affect my content or anything.
Okay. And did you have any special technique you used for pacing, or did you just kind of look at the clock and make sure that, at the halfway point you were about halfway done? What was your pacing method for studying?
That's pretty much what I did. For the science passages, I tried to spend 8 minutes per passage and then 4 minutes per the chunk of free response. For cars, I tried to spend 10 minutes on each passage. And I mean, that kind of got crunched because if you spend 2 or 3 minutes going through the passages, then you don't have 10 minutes
That's
for
true.
each passage.
Right.
But that's generally what I tried to do.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So how did you balance studying for the MCAT while also submitting applications? What was that like?
Yes and no. I actually didn't start my really start my application until after my MCAT, which is, I know you're not really supposed to do that, but sometimes on weekends, if I took an MCAT day off, that's when I would work on my application and getting all the information in and my courses. But other than that, I really didn't spend a ton of time on my application until after I took it because I wanted to focus on the test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how many med schools have you applied to at this point for just this initial stage of the application?
Right now, I applied to 4, and then after I get my score back, hopefully I put that number up to 10 and maybe more.
Yeah. Great. So how did you keep your motivation up? Now, I'd said that there are a lot of common questions I get about pacing and about content versus practice questions, but the number one question I've been getting recently is about keeping your motivation up, especially for students whose original exams were canceled.
Honestly, when I found out my second exam was canceled, I was extremely frustrated. I emailed my advisor at school and I was like, I don't know what to do because I don't know if I can sustain the studying that I've been doing for 9 months for another month. And he responded back basically, the fact that you are worried about this, you'll be fine. And I actually ended up taking a half a week off from all MCAT content just to really clear my brain and relax. And then I was able to jump back in and finish that extra month and just kind of have a new perspective of, hey, like I still want to be a doctor. I want to be able to do surgery one day. Sometimes you need a break though. And I think that break really helped. And it helped me get my motivation back.
That's fantastic. Was that your idea to take days off, or was that suggested to you?
It was suggested to me. I am a type of person who, like, I pedal to the metal. When I start something, I have to finish it. So I was reluctant, but my support group and like my family were like, you should really take a day off. Like even just one, it'll be beneficial. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. How many hours a day on average during your MCAT study days would you estimate you devoted to MCAT studying?
Probably 5 or 6, especially with a month-long Magoosh plan. It was 5 or 6. Some days it was 8 because I would pause the videos a lot and take notes and then start and then pause. For the majority of it, it was probably only an hour. So if I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't study for 9 months. I would only study for 3 and put more time in each day. But
yeah. No, that's what I typically recommend if students have the luxury is 6 hours a day. I just learned from personal experience that I had gone from trying to study 12 hours a day and thinking that I was doing something great. And then when I reduced to 6 hours a day, I was actually getting more done. So yeah, 6 hours a day is great if you have that, if you're able to, and you had a long study period. So that was nice. So tell me more about your experience using Magoosh. How did you use it? Which aspects? And what was most helpful to you?
For Magoosh, I made a lot of use of the videos. I watched all of the content videos. I took notes on them, and I really like that text box right next to the video so you can like watch and type. I used to be like a really handwritten notes person just because writing helps me remember, but there's no way I could do that and not spend like 13 hours a day and get all my stuff done. So I definitely made use of the typing. I love the practice questions. I did daily cars for a while, so I had like cars practice, but I hadn't had any science-based practice. So I really thought those were valuable just because I hadn't had a ton, and I mean, they're on the MCAT, so you have to know. I didn't really use the flashcards. I think I probably should have, but I didn't use a ton of them.
Yep. Great. That's good to hear. And you just kind of, it sounds like your method was kind of freestyle in terms of like choosing whether you're going to work on content or practice questions, and you were in your last month, so you kind of knew what you needed to review. Yeah. Nice. And you had also mentioned Kaplan and Khan. Any other resources that you thought were valuable that our listeners might want to know about?
My daily cars, I did Jack Weston. It's free. You get an email. That website, I do have to warn you, the content kind of varies. Like some days it was extremely easy, and other days it's like, I don't really know what's going on. But I still think it was really helpful. It really helped me. Good. And I'm with my my reasoning skills, like reading, I need to, once I practice, it's fine. And it provided me that practice. So I think it worked out.
Nice. Yeah, he was one of the first people to really have affordable MCAT practice that I was aware of. So it's great that you're still finding his content useful. So let's talk about taking the test. Well, and this is kind of about taking the test, kind of about prepping. But one question I have for you: did you do any practice before the test wearing a mask or gloves?
I actually didn't. I think I mentioned this earlier. I work at the hospital, so I had access to surgical masks, and I've shadowed in the OR for over 8 hours, so the masks doesn't really bother me, and so I didn't practice with it because I knew I'd be fine. But I think if I wasn't using a mask I was comfortable with, like I've never worn a cloth mask, so if I were to do that, I would probably practice with it just because I'm not comfortable with it. But I didn't use any gloves or anything in my practice.
That makes sense. And you said that you had an early morning exam time. So how did you feel that morning going into the exam? I'm guessing it was probably dark out or close to dark. It sounds like from what I know of you, you were kind of far away from a test center. What was that early morning experience like?
It wasn't too bad. My dad and I got a hotel room like 2 minutes from the test site, so I didn't have to wake up super early, or at least any earlier than I was used to. Honestly, when I woke up, I felt ready. Like, it's like, well, it's now or never. And I'm usually, like, with school tests, I'm usually okay. And if anything, I get a little fired up, like, okay, let's do this. Let's test the knowledge. So it was kind of like that. I felt ready, and I was ready for it to be done and over with in 6 hours.
Was the place that you tested in, I mean, first of all, where did you test, and were they still under lockdown? Like, what were the regulations in that particular city or county?
I tested in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm from Minnesota, so I didn't really know of what type of lockdown. I had to wear a mask the whole time unless I was eating or drinking. But I called, I think, like a week or two ahead of time and just asked, like, hey, I'm from Minnesota. Can I travel to your state and take it? And they were fine with it. So
back to taking the test. What kind of social distancing or safety measures were in place?
Well, we had to wear a mask at all times. The lobby, there were only, I think, 4 chairs out, and Pearson was only allowing 4 people into the test center at a time. The chairs were all over 6 feet apart, so you weren't, like, within contact of a person. My testing room, I was actually in a separate room because I got to this test center before anyone else. So I don't really know what, like, the main room was like, but from what I gathered, the people were sitting, I think, 2 computers apart. One at least, maybe 2, but there wasn't anybody directly next to each other.
Okay. And how long did it take to do the check-in? So a lot of students ask about that. Every time you leave and come back in, you have to recheck.
I don't think it was different than it would have been. We had to do the palm vein scanner, like, to check you in and out. Or if that didn't work, my palm didn't want to scan for the majority of it, so they just ended up checking my ID. For me, it took maybe 2 minutes in and 2 minutes out because I couldn't get the scanner to work.
Yeah, that's a while.
If you can get the scanner to work, it was maybe 30 seconds. It wasn't too bad, and you had like a 9 minute break.
Okay, yeah. And how did you plan on using your break? So that's a big thing students are concerned about. Instead of having the 30-minute lunch break, there are now only 3 10-minute breaks. What was your plan for using them, and how did you wind up actually using them?
My plan was to eat, like, a little protein on each break, go to the bathroom each break just to, like, get the blood moving because you have to walk down the hallway. I actually ended up only eating, I think, at one of my breaks, and it wasn't even the lunch break. It was the very first one. But yeah, I just packed a lot of protein and I tried to eat that. I drank a ton of water that day. I think that helped. And also just, I walked around a little bit, like I paced
Mm-hmm.
to get the blood moving because I think that's good for you.
Yeah.
I originally thought that the lack of a 30-minute break was going to be a big deal, but it didn't seem too big when I was actually testing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard from a lot of students. And it's, what the AAMC says is they're just assuming that people are going to be eating before or afterwards. And so they're thinking of it as snack breaks. So did you run out of time on any section?
Yes. I ran out of time on cars, and I was really bummed because I had been working really hard to improve my score. When I took my practice test, I spent 2 or 3 minutes going through all the passages and just kind of getting a gist of it and like seeing, is this one easy or hard? Should I do it now or later? And during the actual exam, I spent, I think, 5 minutes on that instead of 2. So that kind of set my pacing back. And one of the passages I thought was easy turned out to be a lot harder, but yet I still finished it when I probably should have just moved on. And so I tended to get flustered, and then I ran out of time. So that's kind of what happened on that one.
Okay. So and that's, of course, cars is the one that most people run out of time on. So a very common story. In addition to cars, or aside from cars, were particular exam sections more difficult or easier than you thought they would be?
The chem and phys section was a lot easier than I thought. I am not a physicist.
Right.
Physics is not my strong suit, but it went a lot better than I thought. And I'm very thankful for that. The other section I struggled with was the psych and social section. That content is just harder for me to learn. And so it was a lot of, well, I think it's this, but also I really don't know, but I think it's this. And so I'm just not super confident about that.
Yeah. And that's, with the psych-social, so many of the terms are just nearly identical. So it's hard. It's hard in that way. Let's see. So you never took, this was your first official MCAT. But how many practice tests do you think you took leading up to the MCAT?
I took 4 full lengths, and then I did a lot of practice questions. Okay,
great. So let's get into just general reflection questions. Thinking about the entire experience of studying for and taking the exam, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of the fact of how much I learned and ended up retaining. My first practice test I took in, I think, October, and by my last practice test, I had improved 15 points. And so I was proud of that. I was proud that I was getting my cars up to where I actually wanted it to be. And I was also, through Magoosh, I definitely reviewed a lot of content that I would not have if I was still doing Khan Academy, just because I was kind of picking and choosing my videos, where with Magoosh, I made sure I went through all of the content. And I think just knowing that I went through all of it and I had at least seen it in the last month, I think I was really happy with that.
Good. Yeah, I often suggest, because we actually have somewhat fewer videos than Khan. We have like 300, and I don't know how many Khan has, but more than that. And I often suggest, because I think they have a lot of good videos, that students start with ours, and then if they want to go more narrow, then they can kind of dive in. But it's nice that with 300 videos, a lot of students actually can get through it. How about if you could redo one thing about the studying process or practicing, or even on the test day? If there's just one thing you could do differently, what would that be?
For starters, I would do flashcards for psych and soc.
Okay.
Because I struggle with that. The second thing I wish I could redo was the cars section on test day, just because I know I was at the point where I could answer the questions correctly, and I could answer a lot of the questions correctly, but I got in my head, so I don't know if I did. And if I could go back, I would make sure, like, Hannah, you're doing fine. You will get it done. It will be okay. And to just make sure that I was calm during that section and just relax a little bit because I had done all the work.
So what's the best advice that you received from somebody else about the MCAT? And I'm thinking back to, I mean, I thought that the advice to just take a couple days off to clear your head and refocus is wonderful. And I was reiterating that a lot, especially back in like April, when a lot of people were just first getting their tests canceled. But what was the best tip or piece of advice you got in terms of studying for taking the MCAT?
It was a piece of advice from my dad, and it was, relax. You've got this. You've been preparing for how long? You couldn't have prepared anymore. You have done everything you could.
Yeah.
And so just relax because you've done it. You've done it before. You've even been in a mask for 8 hours. Like, you will be fine. And just knowing that I had done everything I could, and like, relax because you can't change it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. And is there, in addition to this, I mean, I just, I kind of hone in on the tips and advice questions because there's always so much valuable stuff there. What other tip or recommendation would you like to pass on to our listeners, many of whom are going to be taking the short MCAT in just, a month or less or a little bit more?
I think that you should just relax because a lot of times, even if you don't know the right answer, if you're calm, you can reason through them. And that's the one thing I wish I could change about mine, is to just stay calm through it. And so I hope that the listeners know that if they stay calm, it will help them to reason through the answers. And also to take rest days. Like I said, I'm not one to stop. Like, once I get going, I'm going. But it's a good thing to take a day off and just reset and relax a little bit. Yeah,
that's great. I'm glad you said that. I think that's sometimes it's only in hindsight that you can really see that clearly. So thanks for passing that on. Is there anything else that you want to say about your experience before we wrap up?
I don't really think so. I think my experience was what was right for me. And I mean, of course, you're always going to want to change stuff, but people should do what's right for them. And it will ultimately benefit them in the long run. Yeah,
great. Well, thanks so much, Hannah, for joining us. And I wish you all the best on your applications. I guess it's going to be, you'll probably get your MCAT score back. It's July 7th, right? Yeah. Well, best of luck on that.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, I do want to wish all of you good luck as well, and wish you a safe, smooth journey through your studies. I also want to direct your attention to the link below because you can find a 20% off for Magoosh. And we have different subscription packages based on time. And I would love to have you on board as students.